a yellow sheet that you can fill out and give to her. She'll get it to me so that we can do that in orderly fashion. We have about 4 minutes per public comment. I will have a timer. I'll try to give you a warning in about 30 seconds to the 4-minute warning, and then we'll go from there. With that, we'll jump right into the board meeting. We have a consent agenda, or a board member may pull something out, but if we can get a motion on the floor for consent agenda, we could probably get us some support and then discuss a few items in there. We have a couple new hires in there I saw as well. Do we have a motion on the floor for?
So moved.
Thank you, Vicki. Does Vicki have support for consent agenda?
Support.
Thank you, Sherry. Discussion, I think always, when we have new hires in there, if we have somebody, Jay maybe, want to make a comment. I believe we had a high school teacher and a young fives, but please, Jay, take the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to welcome Megan Largent here today. She's right here in the front row. New Young Fives teacher at the Early Childhood Education Center. Yeah. So Megan's actually been long-term subbing with us up until recently, until she's officially come on as Mattawan Wildcat. We also actually recently filled a 7th grade science teacher position due to some internal moves, filling the departure of one of our high school science teachers, and that's Maria Sellner, and she'll be joining us officially on January 3rd.
Great, thanks, Jay. Any questions or comments for Jay or administration on the consent agenda? All right, not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. All right, we're going to jump right into presentations, and we've got early elementary and kindergarten PLC update. Randy, you want to take the floor to kick it off?
Absolutely. I'd like to welcome kindergarten here, and I'm looking into the bright lights. Raise your hand if you're kindergarten. Okay, and Mr. Owen, our administrator, principal, is here as well, and we're super excited to have this group come and present. I caught part of their presentation, Mr. Larnett and I did on one of our previous PD days. This group, like all of our staff, working very hard in our professional learning communities, building collaboration, brainstorming best practices, looking at data, and I thought, well, this is just perfect timing to invite them in. Appreciate them coming here tonight to share how they're using PLCs, share a little data, I think. I kind of saw bits and pieces of this, so I think this will give the board a great kind of snapshot of the work that's getting done and why we're investing in the professional learning community time. And I know they're all here. It's fabulous. I think we've got a couple, though, that are speaking, right? Okay. And I think John's going to cue the slideshow, and they are making their way. Kindergarten teachers on the move here. Super exciting. And if you could remember, if you're speaking, or introduce yourself. I'm having trouble seeing who's actually at the mic right now, so I'm going to rely on you guys to introduce yourself, and board, enjoy.
There's going to be 3 of us speaking, Lauren Ralicky and Erica Wainwright, but we also just wanted to let you know that this has been a joint effort. This is our entire kindergarten team but one, and so we just want to let you know that this isn't just the 3 of us speaking because it's the 3 of us that did it. This is a whole group effort. So let's get started. So we're going to present today on our Kindergarten Power Hour, and John, if you want to go to the next slide. So our beginning of the year data, right starting off in end of August, beginning of September, we noticed that we assess our kindergarten students on their capital letter recognition, lowercase letter recognition, and their sound fluency. And we noticed that we had a lot of students at intervention or developing. which was very eye-opening for us. We, in years past, have had students more in the proficient side so that we can start in on those early literacy behaviors and then learning to read. So we were like, okay, what can we do to address these students that may need a little bit more of a boost? So next slide. Next slide, okay. So we found that we had a problem. As a grade level, we noticed that many students were at intervention, and we thought, what now? We had 84 students that needed an IREP, an intervention, an individualized reading intervention plan, which was a lot. And typically what the setup had been to reach these students is we would pull small groups throughout the day. Well, if we pulled these students throughout the day, our parapros and our teachers would be teaching like 20 hours. So it just wasn't feasible. So we thought, how can we reach these students that are intervention, but also how can we reach the students that maybe need the boost, or like that are already high, that need to have some challenging things that happen, and even those mid students, how can we address all of these students? So we noticed, next slide, that we would present to Jim and Pete our idea for Power Half Hour, where we would have students group together at their level, all hands on deck. So we have 5 teachers per team, 10 teachers total, and then we have 5 parapros. And so we thought, hey, let's use everybody for an hour to have all these students be serviced at their level.
Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so how did we initially structure Power Half Hour? So as Courtney already said, we have 2 teams of teachers, 5 on each team, but we also have 5 parapros, so that's 15 adults. So we have 5 teachers and 5 of the 5 paras teaching for a half an hour, and then we switch. So those 5 paras then go to the other team of 5 teachers. And then we have about 230 kindergartners. So each teacher made what we call baseball cards. So it has their name, their stats, their strengths, the things that they need to work on next. And then we shuffled them into groups and decided who would teach what. So we have the 5 teacher groups are teaching the kids that are beginning reading or above grade level. So we have a teacher teaching the high readers, grade level, or 2 teaching grade level, and then pre-readers, and then the 5 parapros are teaching the smaller groups. So they only have 6 kids or less in their group, but our teacher groups have 15 to 22, because those are more at level or above students. And it was pretty amazing because we have 230 kids, so half of those kids are switching rooms at one time. So we thought, how are we going to get 5-year-olds to switch from their groups? So we color-coded with our Eric Carl pictures from Brown Bear, and the kids know, oh, I'm the Redbird group, or I'm the Blue Horse group. And we can move half of the kindergarten students in 30 seconds. They'll go out into the hallway, they get into their rooms, and then they do their work for half an hour, and then they get back to their room. And they're excited because they're like, yeah, I'm Blue Horse, and then they know exactly where all the other kids are going to. And if they switch groups, we meet often to shuffle kids around too. If we notice that they are gaining strengths in one area and need help in another area, then we can switch groups, and they know exactly which teacher is which color animal too. So they get excited to switch. And then we're meeting them at their level all the time. Next slide. So what we noticed in the first 3 weeks was huge growth. Kids were learning their letters, their sounds, and starting to use them faster than before because they're being taught at their level every single day. All kids across the board. Next slide. So this is a students writing from the very beginning of the year. So you'll see there's minimal writing. There's a picture, and the student attempted to write some words on the page. They did their best. But then if you go to the next slide, you'll see that the same student, just 3 weeks later, has already started to apply their knowledge of letters and sounds, and they have attempted a sentence, and that all comes from being able to work with them right at their level. Next slide. So this was kind of a fun story. One of the teachers came to lunch and reported that one of the kids was super excited about her reading. So this is 2 kids partner reading. But she said, one of the girls was all excited. She said, "How am I doing this? I don't even know how to read." And the student was just like so excited that she had picked up a book and just started reading it. So it was a good celebration and just a classic kindergarten moment. So next slide.
Hello. So the data doesn't stop there. The growth did not stop. So we were excited to present to you the data we had from the first 3 weeks. We kind of tucked away and we got updated data for you. And now if you look through this chart, you can see our students who need intervention, we're at 4% students out of our entire grade level that are intervention for capital letters, only 9 students. For lowercase letters, 3%, only 7 students for lowercase at intervention. And for sounds, 4%, 9 students, whereas that number previously was 84 students who qualified for an IRP and who are at that intervention level. So we are so excited to see those numbers drastically change, and we're excited to celebrate students who are in developing. It's like so close to, that's a little bit of our frustration where they're at like 25 letters and we're like, oh, you just need 1 more letter, 1 more sound, and then you're totally proficient. But it was exciting to see that awesome growth and to see that for capital letters, we have 166 students now, and it's still somewhat, middle of the year, beginning of the year, where we usually don't see this tremendous growth until about February and March, and where we're really getting readers. So we're hoping, seeing this growth so early while implementing this instruction, that the sky's kind of the limit, and by the time we get to February, we might see readers we've never seen before in years previous. Next slide. So also what was exciting was we were able to change our structure of what teachers were actually instructing and teaching during our Power Half Hour. You'll see that teacher 1 and 2 are now teaching above grade level readers, whereas initially when we started 7 weeks ago, we only had 1 teacher group that was teaching above grade level readers, but now we have that need. We have all these students who are already above grade level for where we're at in the school year, and you're seeing teachers 3 and 4 teaching at grade level readers, which is fantastic. And teacher 5 is teaching those pre-readers, no longer teaching readers who are at intervention. Only our peers are supporting those students, about 10 or so students that are at intervention per family, and it's just tremendous growth that we honestly, I think as a team, we're surprised and shocked to see, and we're so proud of our students for their tremendous effort and growth in this. Next slide. So this is just that side-by-side data we wanted to show you. If you look at the light orange, that's our September data, and you could see we're over 20% students needed intervention, and now we're down to less than 4%, and you're seeing in the middle developing students we had at the beginning of the year in September, almost, 35, almost 40% students developing. Whoops, sorry about that. And now you're seeing that we have students who were just tremendous and just so excited about that proficient level, where we've got the majority of our students with capital letters that are at proficient. Next slide. Same thing for lowercase. This is exactly what we wanted to see, where you're seeing that huge shift between the September data to the December data, and we're seeing students just skyrocketing through with lowercase letters, and then on the next slide you'll see the same thing with sounds as well, letter sounds. We're thrilled to see just these students jump and skyrocket through this data. Next slide. This is something I'm really passionate about and something that was most exciting for me. This is our mission statement for the early elementary. Our mission is to develop eager and goal-driven learners who thrive through hands-on experiences, play, and dialogue. Data, connectivity, and collaboration will guide solution-focused work, supporting the academic, behavioral, and social-emotional success of everyone in the learning community. And this is something that I said I'm so passionate about, because we're not servicing just the lowest students, the students who need intervention. They are getting their needs met, but we're meeting every single student in kindergarten where they are at, and we're able to have high expectations and to push them. So we're no longer just servicing and getting that intervention and small group time for just a small portion of our students, but for the entire grade level. And I think that's why we're seeing growth that's just beyond measure for all of our students. And I think it just speaks to the PLC framework as well. and that were solution focused, and we saw the problem right away, and we went to our admin and thought, oh, this is a huge problem, what are we going to do? And they listened to us and they helped us, and that's why we're so happy to have this PLC time. The other thing I want to touch on too is that something we are thrilled about is that we didn't have to go to our parents in September and say, hi, I'm Mrs. Wainwright. Your student qualifies for an IRIP, and I know that sounds really scary, but they're really low in their reading. And so we were thrilled that we were able to actually get time to meet our students and understand where they're at, and then work within just 3 weeks to get tremendous growth, where we already had students who tested out of that IRIP qualified intervention level, and that was just a thrill to see as well. So now we know, like, this is something that's proven to work, and so we don't have to have like that uncomfortable conversation with our parents right off at the beginning of the year and just use that standardized test data that we had kind of relied on in September, but actual good classroom work and really beautiful data that showed how we can improve and what we needed to do, and we did that. Next slide.
Also, speaking to the mission statement too, we as a whole grade level have even said we're also meeting the needs of their social emotional skills as well. I mean, there's hasn't been probably any year where I know more students in kindergarten than I know now. They know us by name, we know them by name, and it's not just those students that maybe need a little extra support throughout the day. It's the students just walking down the bus line, and it's the students walking through the hallway on the way to lunch. And so it's a great feeling that we know them and they know us. And I mean, like Lauren said, that there's 230-ish students, and we probably know the majority of them by name, which is unheard of. So just in summary, we had 84 students start intervention for sounds, and we now only have 9. We started the year with only 32 proficient in letter sounds, and we now have 138. And this was accomplished in only 8 weeks, so we just can't wait to see what the rest of the year is going to bring, because we're just so excited to see what's to come. So that's what we have for you, but feel free, we are all here to answer your questions, so if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us, we're going to turn it over to the other teachers so that they can speak as well.
Thank you. Wonderful presentation, and we also appreciate you getting us the slideshow ahead of time. We were able to review that in our packet as well. It's incredible success over 8 weeks. Board members have questions or comments?
I'll start. First, thanks for coming. My heart tingles just watching you guys as a whole team. It's awesome to see, right? So thank you so much for what you're doing. I go back to when my kids first started, and it was at kindergarten, right? You guys are the first touch for many of our parents and kids, and the impact that you make is amazing. And to see this work, it's just, I can't say amazing enough. I mean, it's awesome, right? And I'll say, for me, with all the stuff that's going on outside of this, all the adults bickering about other things, sometimes I lose track of the amazing work that's happening in the classrooms because we're too busy arguing about other stuff, right? So thank you for continuing to do that work and pouring your heart and everything into these kids. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Mark, do you have a comment?
Yeah, a short one, but for the whole team, again, I also applaud your initiative in recognizing the problem and figuring out a way to take it on head on. The question I have is, do you, and maybe Courtney, I'd pick on you since I know you, but do you guys get a feeling that a lot of these kids are kids that did not go through a preschool program or do not have a great parental support program at home? And if so, is there a possibility we could provide those kids and their parents with some kind of resource before they even come to kindergarten to start working on this ahead of time and maybe even launch you guys off at a higher level on your work?
I'm going to let the queen of kindergarten, Jolene Davey, answer that for you.
Hi, I've taught kindergarten for a long time, and we noticed this year that the children came in a little bit less prepared as they were before, and I think a lot of it has to do with COVID. Children couldn't have a full year of preschool. They couldn't have our young fives even necessarily for a full year. And so we saw that, and we decided that we wanted to reach every child, and so we had this to come up. So I don't know that it's necessarily the parents that, I think that it's a problem for the whole country. We need a universal preschool. We need also things to be provided for children. But I think it would be a great thing, too, if we could provide some things at the end of the year for those incoming kindergartners. We have Jump Into Kindergarten that we do. We could do some things with that. We have a lot of things. We have a strong Young Fives program that maybe if we can just keep, these things going. But I think it's great that we're reaching all the children and not just, and they're also able to meet other teachers. So I think it's a really, really great program, and I have seen great results with it. And it's coming very quickly, too. As they said, it often happens in February or March. We're kind of seeing it far ahead, which will enable us to teach more in the year.
Thank you. Sherry?
Well, again, thank you for coming so much. It's just so exciting tonight to experience in the classroom. We have waited and waited for that, and long overdue. And such an exciting thing. And your body language, 3 of you were presenting, but the rest of you were like, I mean, it's contagious, and the kids pick up on that. So, you are truly the right role models to be with our kids. And we thank you so much for that. Reading is a cross-curriculum activity. So it won't just impact, reading. It will impact math and all the other, things that they'll be learning. So, again, thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it. You are welcome anytime with things like that.
Thanks, Sherry. Go ahead, Vicki.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, thank you guys. What is the next steps from this point? Did I put you on the spot?
Hi, I'm Kristen Welch. I would say the next steps for us is just to continue to monitor their growth. We're just at the point now before break at redistributing and looking at that data to shuffle and come up with what are our next steps within our skill levels and decide where does that child go next. So like we talked about, our lowest of lows and our highest of highs and everybody in between is getting exactly what they need. So we're able to challenge those highest learners and enrich what they're currently working on, even though they're way above grade level, or our lowest kids who have made significant progress and just keep progressing them along. So I think for now, we look at that next step for them. What's the next skill level? What do we want to see next in that reading progression? And just keep moving them forward. In kindergarten, we've always taken a look at the kids' high frequency words. If they're at the kindergarten level and they meet all of their kindergarten expectations in their high frequency words, we move them on to the first grade high frequency words. And then if they pass those and they're ready for more, then we move them on to second grade. So we never really stop. We just keep that accelerated level going. And the higher we set our expectations, the more and more these kids grow. When we start to put boundaries on them, then that's when we get a little bit stagnant. So I think for our team, as long as we keep our excitement level up and we're super engaged in this, just like the kids are, the world's the limit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Have you shared this with the Young Fives and the ECEC to see where they stand with the youngsters now that we are, in person analyzing these students?
Yes. So I don't know necessarily at kind of a whole building level have we shared, but I personally have interactions and ties with lots of the Young Fives teachers, and so they are aware of our excitement, of course, right? When you're excited about something, it's kind of infectious and spreads like wildfire through the school. And so they have heard about it. I don't know that they've had, kind of like the visual or the PowerPoint and kind of this backing of what we're seeing, but they have been informed and heard of what's going on in our interest.
Well, I ask because, the comment came up about, kids couldn't even go to a preschool last year, but now that we are in session, I would hope that the next year's kindergartners will be coming in a little more prepared. I just wonder if they have looked or analyzed to see where they're at in comparison to this year's kindergartners as far as a difference?
And I do think that they have had more, like last year, even the in-person students across the board had that in and out kind of transitionings. So even at some of our PLC meetings where we've done across district communication, the Young Fives teachers have shared with us, like they weren't able to get them as far as they usually do. But we haven't had another one of those meetings yet, and I have a feeling we will before the end of the year, where we'll get a chance to talk across grade levels again. Yes.
I guess I have two questions, and part of it's probably a piggyback on that one is, do you feel like there's room for this next year, even if you don't have as many kids in that potential for IRIP stage, where you could push them to, I see lots of nodding heads, so I'll stop asking. You could push them even further ahead, right? That'd be awesome.
Continue year after year, because it's made such an impact already.
And then the next question I have is, do you think that the alignment that you guys as a teaching group have gotten here on this one initiative has helped you, I guess I'll pick on any one of you want to speak, has it helped you connect better with your colleagues? And do you feel like you are pulling the same direction for your grade level or for the building?
I think that we have shared a lot. We have common planning time now, and we can sit together and talk about things. So I do at grade level, for instance, and I've been able to talk with one of my colleagues about what is she doing. She does just a little bit different than I do, but we can kind of coordinate and plan for it. But then on my the other family also, we're coordinating with what are they doing, and I can kind of alter what I'm doing. Also, I have smaller group size, so I can kind of work with those kids and sit with them and learn what they need. And it's different than having my whole classroom I've got that half an hour that's very focused. So I've got a small group of children, and then I can go to my family and say, oh, I noticed that these children need that next level, and then we adjust from there. So I'm hoping that next year, and even if children come in differently, we're still, maybe I won't do grade level, maybe I'll do something different, and maybe we'll need 2 or 3 at above. We can always alter that, I think.
I think our philosophy has also changed from, we used to say, like, these are my kids. Our philosophy has changed too. We used to say, like, these are my kids, and now as a grade level, we say, these are our kids. We're teaching all the kids. So from teachers to parapros to even like parent volunteers, they're our kids now. They're not just my kids.
I think, too, we've always been a very close group that works very well together, but once we found a problem, came up with a solution, and put our heads together, then we already had the trust, but then once you put it in action and you see it working, then you trust each other even more. And we also had the trust to say, well, I feel like one of my strengths is teaching this group, but I don't feel as strong teaching another group, but I know so-and-so is strong in that. So I think knowing each other already and having that trust, and then putting it into action and continuing to see that I absolutely can trust all of these other people with my students, because they're all our students, and we're all a team anyway. So.
I'm wondering if this degree of seeing a problem and then implementing change and evaluation, would that all have been possible if you weren't using the professional learning community model, like this PLC? You guys have mentioned it a few times, and I think there's probably a lot of parents out there that don't know what that is exactly. It's really exciting to see, but I don't know how much you having that professional space impacted the ability to do this. I imagine it did, but does anyone want to comment on that? Like what that is, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and I'm excited. I sit in the back here, and I didn't want to say anything. I was just going to let these guys do all the talking, but then I got this part, and I'm like, I got to say something here.
but it's kind of cool to watch a team of teachers and paraprofessionals who are really colleagues. They're not seen as different levels. They're together as a team. Doing this work is amazing. It's kind of like when you see something, you know what it is, and you know, and maybe you can't describe everything about it or tell everything about it, but you know what it is, and what you're seeing and hearing from this team is PLCs at work. And I've been doing this a long time. This is my 35th year. And I've seen a lot of schools, a lot of districts try to implement PLCs. And a lot of times they're kind of doing it. It's kind of PLC light. They'll check off boxes. They'll say they're meeting, but they're not really doing the whole process. And they don't have the energy that you're seeing here. What you're seeing is really a PLC process where they identify a clear problem. They focus on that problem. They pool their resources. They work together to implement a change or in some instruction, and then they're committed to meeting to review that on a regular basis and willing to take a chance and share my data, which is scary as a teacher. When I taught, I could shut my door, nobody ever would have bothered me, okay? But they're constantly sharing that data and moving kids and talking, and then you feel the energy. So I think basically, yeah, the PLC process is just having, well, a couple things that are also in place that we got fortunate this year to have happen. Structure makes a difference. We have a schedule now where teachers have a common planning time by family every day, which is huge. You have to have time to meet. You can't say we're going to work as a learning community but provide no time for them to meet. We also have the half days and full day PDs where there's additional time to work on the PLC work. We have a structured schedule now where kids have some predictability about the day, and the teachers control their day. So they have a block of time. It's not like it's chaos. So those things were the foundation. But then once this group got going, they just ran with it. And it's awesome to see. The funny thing is that the PLC work at the beginning of the year, which is still going on, was focused on math. And they identified this as a problem, and on their own volition and their time, added this to the mix. Still working on math. We have a new math program, lots of things going on, lots of learning going on with that, doing that. And I don't hear one peep or complaint from any of them about the work. That's what's amazing. Tons of work going on. I've not heard anyone say anything but the energy about getting together and doing this. And they're all here. So, again, I'll stop. I get excited. I'm better off not saying anything because then I can't stop. So.
Oh, thank you. I think it's wonderful, and it's so refreshing. Like, I'll echo what Ted said, to see this as a board member, and remember why we're doing this, and like to see your energy and to see the difference you've made in just a few months. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the most common questions I get as a board member is why all the half days. Like, professional development is important, and you utilizing that time and the other shared planning time is just really exciting to see. And thank you for sharing this with us tonight. It really rejuvenated me.
Yes, kindergarten team, I'm noticing you have matching shirts. I'm jealous. Board, let's work on that. A couple things I heard, and just to kind of wrap up. Somebody used the phrase beautiful data. And have we ever heard that? Does that get thrown around a lot in the curriculum department? That is a crystallization of PLCs, because the data is beautiful, because that's what's driving the conversation. So when the board commits to freeing the administration up to create this in the schedule, and it is cumbersome for families. Dare I say, probably some days it's annoying when the half day sneaks up on you. But people listening, families, community, this is the crystallization of the power of carving that time out. So what they came up with is a byproduct of PLC. That doesn't mean every grade level is doing the power hour, right? It's going to change grade level department building. The key here tonight is when I saw this presentation, I was like, this is what they identified based on the data, and they crafted. We're just providing that space and time. So kudos to the administration at the building level. I know Mr. Larner's been working hard on that, and a lot of our other administrative staff. But thank you so much for coming out and for taking time out of your evening. And yeah, keep up the great work. We're gonna look forward to an update at the end of the year, and you're gonna have to get a bigger slideshow, or I don't know, to capture it on the chart. Way off the chart. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, great work. Thank you. Let's have a round of applause. Next is a school board report. We have a variety of items throughout the agenda that really, I think, are evident of that. I guess I just reflect on the last 30 days. I don't think we had any professional development that anybody attended, but through the text that I saw from different board members, from Randy, there's a flurry of student activities that a lot of folks have attended. I was able to attend the play here yesterday. I thought the students did an excellent job. I know Sherry was at a basketball game. Ted's on the slopes already. There are a lot of folks doing a lot of things. I think Bruce was in the classroom judging senior seminars. Thanks, Bruce, for volunteering to do that. Does anybody have any comments they want to make for a board report? I think a lot of the other items are, like I said, are part of the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, it's got to be a quick meeting. I'm going to be back at first hour tomorrow, so we got to be quick.
Well, I think with that, we'll turn over to Jay and Randy for the health and safety plan update, discussion, interactive discussion, not only a report out from administration, but then I think it's just a discussion with the board as well on a variety of topics that I know Randy's going to cover. Thanks, Randy.
Yes, so in terms of the health plan, or health and safety plan that we've been updating the board on at each meeting, I did communicate with staff and families this past Friday that we will be staying the course after the holiday break with requiring masks, so we'll be under the same protocols that we're currently under. But we did add a target review date of, I believe January 28th is the Friday, the last Friday of January, and indicated to staff and families that we'll either do one of two things. We, of course, after reviewing the data and you know, through the month of January, coming out of the holidays, we'll either stay the course and extend the mandate or requirement for masks, or we'll alter that plan in some manner. You know, after having discussion at the administrative level, we did feel comfortable putting a date out there to review, a hard date to come back and review, as opposed to just saying we're going to stay the course through spring break or for the end of the year. So we do want to have those hard points to stop, review the data, look at everything. But in the communication, you know, generally speaking, our goal has been to keep our doors open 5 days a week, to keep as many students and staff, for that matter, in the buildings as possible. We do feel like the plan is working right now, that it's a balanced approach, especially coming into the holidays, wanting to give ourselves a little bit of space after the holiday to get back, get settled, and then review the data that's out there. So the health and safety plan is posted on our website. It's on the front page. You can find it there. So a couple other pieces that we're looking at as well. You know, in terms of cleaning procedures and all of those items, those are status quo. They're staying the same. So we're not lessening any of those other mitigation strategies. There's been a lot of talk in the county right now with all of the schools in terms of acquiring testing kits. We don't have those in hand, but making those available is maybe for families, a little more of a convenience piece, that we'll be able to house those kind of on a regular basis. Like I said, we don't have those yet. They've been ordered. Those should be in hopefully before Christmas break, and then we'll coordinate some kind of structure there for families that want to utilize that, more of a convenience piece. We are looking at, you know, currently right now, if a student is exposed to a positive case, they're asymptomatic, this is unvaccinated, right? Because there's two different kind of tiers here, vaccinated and unvaccinated, and it's all outlined in that plan. You can test, if asymptomatic, exposed, you can test and return early off quarantine. So we have that in place. There are some schools that are tightening that time frame up or shortening that. And so by making some of those kits available on site, it might expedite that process. But that would be something where, you know, obviously we'll clearly communicate that out. But for the most part, the main tenets of the health plan we'll stay, proposing here administratively to keep those in place, and then we review approaching the January 28th.
So, yeah, I guess I'll make a few comments. Randy, I think about your last point there, I appreciate that you're administratively handling this. I know we had board action prior to the school year. I know it's repetitive for a lot of the folks that have attended board meetings, but just to repeat it, we did have board action that basically said that we wanted administration to follow the most restrictive of either Kalamazoo or Van Buren County, any mandates that they may pass. And Kalamazoo County did pass that mandate. We know as of right now that requirement will retire, I believe, at 5 p.m. Friday, which gets us through basically break. We're done with school at that point. So I appreciate the administration putting together this plan, which I think ultimately is to keep kids in school. I did my homework as I try to do every board meeting. If you look at Kalamazoo and Van Buren County data, I mean, we have the highest case rate we've had in the pandemic. We have the highest hospitalization rate we've had in the pandemic. And while it is alarming, and there's certainly reasons for that, and I would advocate anybody that's not vaccinated, obviously, to get vaccinated. I'm certainly in support of that. There is, I guess, a little bit of good news that the Pediatrics Association data for children really has not changed. It's still very low. So I do feel like we're, the fact that we've been able to keep school open and keep kids at school, and I feel that there's not really a health risk to them, that's a good thing. My hope is that we'll see some updated children's guidance around contact tracing and quarantining that may assist the administration to move to some relaxation of masks at some point. But again, I think where we're at today, I support the administration's goal to keep kids in school, and especially those that can get wrapped up in quarantine. That may be asymptomatic or symptomatic. There's just a lot of different things that can put a child out of school for multiple days. But with that, I'll give up the mic if somebody else wants to make some comments, questions.
Thanks, Randy, for keeping us informed on what's going on. Like Scott, looking at the data, I know that where I work, we've been struggling with it as well, trying to keep people at work and keep people healthy. So thank you for keeping that in mind, all of this in mind as we're going through this. I do like that we now have a systematic approach to trying to look at data to figure out next steps. I think that's important to be able to keep the community informed as to how we move that. I think for our youngest students that are just starting to get vaccinated, I'd say my youngest is closest to being, I guess, considered at a fully vaccinated state here in the next week. So I think we're getting close to where we'll have a lot of, some more of our students vaccinated, which should help. So I appreciate you keeping us in the loop and working towards a safe place to be, and more importantly, keeping kids in the building, or as important, keeping kids in the building and learning. Thank you.
Maureen, did you have a comment? I thought I saw your mic light up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the administration. I think the month-to-month approach is a good one. We're definitely not at a place where we can back off on any mitigation like everyone's commented on. I too want to echo Scott's encouragement for vaccination, and just remind parents that those of you that did vaccinate your teenagers when they were first eligible, 16 and 17-year-olds are now eligible, FDA approved, for a booster. So if you have an older teen and it's been 6 months since their second shot, they can get boosted. And I look forward to, getting some of those tests and continuing to work, with the administration on, I'd love to see as rates eventually go down, working more on test and stay strategies, things like that. It's something we're going to constantly be reevaluating. But I think we're in a good place with our protocol coming back from break. Testing is encouraged for gathering during the holidays. We're in a mitigation phase of this pandemic. You don't have to not gather necessarily, but considering testing before gathering with people you don't normally associate with we're seeing lots of cases related to Thanksgiving. So there's nothing wrong with protecting those you love and want to gather with by rapid testing before. That's it.
I guess I do have one question, and Maureen, just because you spoke to it for a second, the test and stay thing. I know there's a couple local school districts, I believe Schoolcraft is one of them, that has a policy or a procedure or a policy in place where for exposed or asymptomatic, exposed, unvaccinated, like I said, there's like 16 tiers, right? But that when they come to school, if they can, there's a place where they stop off that list of kids where they get tested and hold, and then, if they're negative, they continue on to school. Is that what you're talking about with the test and stay?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually heard about Portage and then read about in some of my national groups for school physicians, a lot of schools are moving towards that. So the mask, it would be, if a child was exposed, they would be masking, but if unvaccinated daily testing and the tests are negative, it's actually pretty low risk. They're not seeing so why not keep those kids in person and learning? Yeah, that's what test and stay is. And I think I'm still researching it, and we have tests on order, but it's something we should be looking into and considering. And it would be, eventually as cases got down to orange and yellow, they'll eventually get there again. Is it something where we can even change our mask requirement to not have to be universal because of things like that? So if you're vaccinated and not wearing your mask, but may have had an exposure, but you're asymptomatic, you wear your mask for those days that you're still in your exposure period and you test. And then they're still in person. So I think it's something we should keep looking into and considering.
The only request I'd have is if we go in, we're not there, right? But it'd be nice to be able to, parents make sure they've got that choice to do that, meaning that it could be a real burden to some families that their kid gets to school, they find out they're positive, and now they got to figure out how to come get them within the next half an hour or whatever that is. So, they might opt out of that and just decide to keep them home during that time period, but make sure they know that there's a potential that every time their kid's in a test and stay status that they could have to come get them.
Other comments, questions on the health plan? Randy, I'm not seeing any. Were you going to speak a little bit to just maybe some general safety plan updates, please? Thanks.
Sure, Board. In regards to general school safety, just want to update the board on some of the activities here around the district. Like all schools now, we're required to have what's called an emergency operations plan, EOP for short. So if you hear that acronym, that is our school's comprehensive safety plan, response plan. Lots of details, lots of work put into this document. Training, revisions. It's kind of considered a living document, if you will, where you're coming back, you're reviewing it. So there typically is a, throughout a year process where schools are going to come back, they're going to refresh, they're going to update, they're going to bring new staff on board and have these conversations. So over the last couple weeks, just to update the board, we have conducted a review. We have had conversations with our internal safety team, frequent conversations. We've got some meetings coming together with county agencies just to refresh, touch bases. So those kinds of steps are in place. We have had more active conversation administratively over the last couple weeks. In terms of, in light of events that have happened within the last couple weeks, what conversations should we be having about additional types of, safety measures, right? Some of these were already in play prior to the last couple weeks. One of the things we were contemplating and have kind of pushed this to the forefront is we've had great success with our school resource officer, SRO, so another acronym. And actually, we were in conversation administratively about expanding that footprint. A school of our size, back in the day when maybe before budgets were cut or whatever, what was the reason? A school of our size may have, a minimum of 2, if not 3 SROs. And so, prior to the last month, there was kind of strategic talk happening about that anyways. We have a great relationship with the Mattawan Police Force. We've got some deputies from the Van Buren's Sheriff's Department here, and of course, Cody. Cody's over there. He's our SRO right now. So active conversation in terms of expanding that footprint and kind of having a plan for that. And so I'll definitely want to keep the board updated on that. A couple different funding options, right? Because that's always the next question. Okay, so how are we going to pay for this? A lot of the funds that we can use would be around the ESSER relief funds right now. So I know that's a good start, but a lot of schools worry about, legacy costs or continuing to fund that. So that's where I would say, that's the burden on the administration to come to the board with the plan to fund this, to invest. I'd rather use the word investment into these types of initiatives because, I have received a lot of emails about, not a lot, a handful or a lot of discussion out there, and we might even have public comment on safety tonight. And I encourage that conversation. Just about other mitigation, metal detectors or, these kinds of things. These are all good conversations that we need to have dialogue on and develop a plan for. But when I think about an investment and a return in terms of building relationships with the community, with students, with parents, the school resource officer is probably at the top of my list in terms of active, engaging relationships that are built around creating a safe environment. So please know, as I've kept the board updated, safety is our top priority. We are, even before the last several weeks, whenever situations come in or threats come in or concerning activity, our administration, our school resource, our law enforcement officers are immediately intervening and investigating. And hopefully you've seen that in communications and the community is seeing that in what we're sending out to them. Especially now, there's a heightened sensitivity, right? And a lot of schools are dealing with threats that are coming in. The vast majority of these, as you're reading, are deemed non-credible, but that doesn't mean that it's not violating policy or school handbooks. So you're seeing a lot of these schools, Mattawan included, continuing on that internal disciplinary investigation phase. So in several of my communications, in fact, I just sent one out, before the board meeting about a couple other things we were working through today. Reminding parents, staff to stay vigilant, right? Keep reporting, right? This is what we want, but also have those conversations with your children that even if this is kind of in a joking manner, I even hate saying that, but a lot of what we're seeing now are students just not thinking through what they're saying. And the reality is, these are very serious kinds of activities, and law enforcement and the prosecutor's office have vowed to search these out, every one of them, prosecute if applicable. And, I know the board, we all struggle with these kinds of hearings or, making that decision to put a student out, but the reality is we can't tolerate this behavior. We want to come alongside students, right, and provide opportunities for growth, right, and learning, because kids are going to make mistakes. However, it becomes very difficult and tenuous when those mistakes are around school violence, weapons in schools and violence and threatening kind of behavior. So, that would be my public service announcement, right, to our families out there who I think are, doing what they can, having those conversations, but prevention, reporting early, right, as soon as something is heard, that is key. And I commend, staff, students, community folks that have, made that phone call, picked up that phone, reported that. May seem like nothing. And they are being all searched out, and so we're going to stay vigilant on that. Yeah, that was a long-winded response.
So yeah,
but,
I actually have
questions.
a couple questions. So as a parent today, myself and Lisa, I get an email about the event today. I get a text. I get a phone call, or if I miss the phone call, it's a voice message that's read out to me. Or I know my wife is a Facebook user; she can check Facebook. Perhaps there's parents that are watching the live stream. You could remind them how they sign up for School Messenger, how they get their phone numbers updated with their building. Can they do that online, or should they call just their building central office?
And I'm looking at my executive assistant because I want to be careful how I answer this. They can do it online through PowerSchool, but they've got to have a login. And this is a great point because we have found that there were some kind of glitches in the communication, and it all depends on what families check when they're signing in. So if nothing is checked, they may not get anything, or they may do phone call only. So we do try to do email and phone call on critical pieces. Would that be a phone call into the office if they don't have their sign-in, Central? Yeah, so families out there listening or watching, if you're having trouble with PowerSchool, you're not getting school communications, like if you didn't get one this afternoon from me, then something's not set up right. You would call your school office, call central office, or if you have your login credentials, you can log in, navigate through PowerSchool on the communications, and then make your selection that way.
Oh, that's a great reminder. And then maybe I think it's worth also maybe taking just 2 minutes to talk about OK to Save, the program that we have, safety program we have in place today. Because I know there are many programs out there. The board's aware of others, as well as administration is aware of even more so than that. But that program's been in place for a while. You speak to that?
I sure can. And I just got a text from our IT person. You can also, regarding PowerSchool, send an email to portalsupport@mattawanschools.org. Portal, Portal, the word support, all together there at mattawanschools.org. So in terms of OK to Say, yes, so that is a statewide program, tip line that any, that was designed for students to report, questionable, suspicious activity, really make any kind of report, things that they're seeing or things that they've heard about that are questionable, they're concerned about. So that is out there. There's a link on our website that students can go to and provide that information. And that network is set up through different agencies and then ultimately gets routed back to school administration.
Yeah, and I've seen the posters throughout the school buildings as well. Other questions on school safety for Randy or other administrators?
I've got one, Randy. I know we've talked, you mentioned before, I guess this would be a plug to everybody listening. It stinks that when we're talking about adding SROs, one of the things we have to talk about is funding, right? So I guess I would ask all our parents is reach out to your legislators because this is a public issue, not just a school issue, right? In our community, right, we got 3,800 students in one area. Seems like the best place to be patrolling, right? Or to have those types of officers. So to get with legislatures to make sure that schools don't have to worry about how they're going to fund this, right? Because keeping kids safe should be should be the first thing that we do. And then secondly, speaking of okay to say, I know that there's a lot of the stuff that you guys have unfortunately been having to deal with come from kids saying stuff. So thank you to the parents that are having to have uncomfortable conversations at dinner about what they're supposed to do and what kids are supposed to do. It's making a difference. Kids are doing what they're supposed to do. So thank you to all the parents and all the kids, particularly for doing those things. So the pieces that we have in place you can see the fruits of that labor. So thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Other comments? Okay. All right, not hearing any. We're going to jump into new business. Our first item on the agenda is the second reading of some policies. Policy committee met before this meeting, and we have some policies for a second reading and a vote. It's in your packet. Would anybody like to entertain that motion as presented for the policies that are in there?
So moved.
Thank you, Bruce. I'll support that. Randy, Bruce, either one of you want to comment on just for public's sake, I guess, mostly updates of law, I believe. However, there are a few others in there that you might want to update us on.
Bruce, you want me to jump in, and then you can do cleanup there if I butcher this too badly. So the core set would be our winter, if you will. It is winter, by the way. Neola revisions, and the majority of those from first reading last month, changes due to changes in the law. Okay, so the two additional policies that came through committee tonight and will come to the board during this general session, I'll speak to briefly. One of them is a new policy, policy 8520. And so this policy, kind of a unique policy. There's a lot going on right now with discussion around vaccine mandates. Right through MyOSHA, or through the federal OSHA agency, down through the Michigan and all through the states. That is currently stayed right now. So all of the state orders surrounding the executive order from the Biden presidency that involved mandating vaccines for organizations with 100 or more employees, part of that required schools to set policy, right, thinking that that was going to get rolled out by now, okay, but it got stayed. But most schools are being advised to go ahead and prep a policy if that is released and upheld and then executed by MyOSHA, if this is making sense to you. So this policy 8520 would only take effect if it is upheld by the courts, right, and then MyOSHA releases this vaccine mandate. So I want to be super clear about that, and the language is reflected that would only take effect if MyOSHA issues rules that require compliance with the executive order.
Just to be very clear, Randy, that MyOSHA order is for Mattawan employees, not students.
Oh,
correct?
yes.
Yeah. You said that, but I want to repeat it because I think it's important for everybody listening to know that is stayed, but this is for vaccinations of employers of over 100 employees. This is not students.
Right, yeah, absolutely not for students. Heard no discussion on that from any agency, by the way. Yeah, this would just be employees. But I do want to make sure to our staff that are listening in, this is being reviewed and suggested that it be adopted if and when, or if, it is released and then executed by MyOSHA. So if you can kind of read through that language, it would not be executed if there were no mandate, right? So it really is just kind of preparing for the case if that order does come through. The second piece would be in 5610. You should have a copy in your packet. And then this is emergency removal, suspension, and expulsion of students policy 5610. Now, the copy where you're going to be looking, that the committee looked at, is on the second page of that policy. Okay, now my copy is not color-coded. Is your copy, do you see green and red on the second page? No. Okay, so bear with me here. If you look on the second page of 5610, under long-term suspension or expulsion at the bottom.
So since we have a whole big packet, for the board members that are looking, it's the one labeled 73, page 73.
Oh, good, excellent, thank you. Yeah, I don't have the page.
It's the second page of 5610, but it's the page number 73.
In your packet. Yeah, you're going to look for the strikeout sentence. I just want to make sure everybody's there, all the boards there. We good? So the proposal would be the strikeout is the current language. All right, so the strikeout is the superintendent may recommend to the board a long-term suspension, or may recommend a long-term suspension or that the student be expelled. That's current language. So long-term suspension under the current policy is anything over 10 days, right? The sentence below that would be your edit, your change. So you would strike out the current, and this is a Neola language piece here, right? So I went back to the Neola original draft, and there were options you could pick, and just conversation with administration and at the policy committee, the proposal would be the superintendent may suspend a student for a period longer than 10 days or expel a student. The board shall act on any appeal to the decision. So that's a Neola language piece. But obviously, as of late, we've had a little bit more conversation about a process for suspension and unfortunately for expulsion. And looking at other schools around the area and previous counties where I've worked, the suggestion we're bringing tonight is not a phrase or language that is completely void in schools. So a lot of schools have moved to this language, which allows the administration to carry out the whole process for due process, right? You're still following all of these legal pieces required for due process. Investigation, you've got to meet with the parties involved, but it would allow the administration to, in a little bit more efficient manner, have the latitude to suspend or expel, in this case, beyond 10 days, with the option for parents to appeal to the board. So the board's still involved, but on an appeal process, if that makes sense. So everything else in this policy pertains and has to be followed, right? When you talk about due process, the 7 factors that you would look at, and all of these pieces would still have to be followed.
Bruce, do you want to speak to that a little bit? Since the policy committee met on this and had a longer discussion. I'm familiar with it as well. But please, Bruce, if you want to comment.
Well, like Randy was saying, that's the only change is we're not involved, the board is not involved until the appeal basis if it is used. We've already set policy and procedure, which is our job. We're allowing them the latitude to enforce policy and procedure, but we're not involved with a suspension, or long-term suspension or expulsion until it's appealed, is the basics of it. And just to double down on this other one with the COVID, that's if, and we all know that's a big if, that goes into effect. We're thinking of doing this separately, but rereading the first paragraph, the first line of it, it says effective immediately when. Well, when isn't here, and we know how many companies and everything else are suing to block it, and it's being blocked in those places. So that has about a snowball's chance in July of making it right now, so we're not too worried, but the wording in there is critical, that that policy does not take effect at all until that rule is done in court.
I'd just offer kind of an example on the appeal to the board just to help kind of bring it home and see if anybody has any final questions on it. If administration, if we pass this, administration wanted to suspend a student for 25 days, they would have the ability to do that. if the parents appealed to the board on that suspension, obviously the parents are looking for it to be reduced or removed, correct? The board would take that appeal up, and there's really three ways that could go. They could support the administration's original suspension of 25 days. We may think, based on evidence that we've heard, we want to lower it or reduce it or eliminate it. Or the board, based on evidence that we've heard and seen, might actually think that 25 days is not enough, and the board can take further action. So the appeal process by the parent, while it gives them an avenue to due process and to approach the board, we as a board have the latitude to address that disciplinary event in its totality and make a decision that we think is appropriate. So we're not handcuffed by any, it can only be what was being appealed to be removed or not. We basically are re-reviewing it like a brand new case, either supporting the administration or making our own opinions on that. Just wanted to be clear that the board knew that we have that latitude. Questions on that one?
Only question I have is typically when we do policy reviews, we do a first reading and a second reading. Yep. In this case, we're voting on a second reading for a majority of them, or for particularly the COVID mandate. And on this new temporary policy adjustment, is this the one and only reading? So are we looking to vote this into effect today?
Wasn't sure if Bruce was going to jump in. No, either way, the committee meeting, the policy committee is actually technically the first reading, because the policy committee is a public committee meeting. So this, in fact, would be the second reading of those two additional ones that were brought in.
I'd just add to that. I know we talked, it might have been the last meeting or the meeting before, Valerie had attended Troon governance class, and I think this is a good takeaway for the board moving forward. We have been doing the right thing by having a very structured policy committee meeting. Publishing that, now making it a public policy committee meeting going forward, those can be our first reading, so the board meeting would be the second reading. So then it really helps the administration to get policy changes done in a more efficient manner versus 1 month to the very next month. So in a pinch, if they needed the policy approved, they could do that with a policy committee meeting that's published and then being that first reading, second reading. Did I get that right, Valerie?
But when it's read the second time, there's always the option to, it's written in one way, but if we agreed to allow the superintendent to handle suspensions and maybe not expulsions, or, there's other options, so it is up for discussion, correct?
Correct.
So that's what I thought we.
Yeah.
we
So
had
the board
talked
still
about.
has final say,
Okay.
and if like now we have a motion on the floor to vote on this, but after discussion, if there was a particular policy you wanted to change wording on, you could make a motion to amend
Okay,
at that point.
Thanks.
So being as I'm not a part of the policy committee, and I trust the folks on the policy committee, so I just got some questions for those that are there. I want to make sure that when we do these, I know, so I'll date myself. I want to say 10 years or so that I've been on the board. I've been involved in four of these where they were longer than 10 days. I hope we don't get to a spot where efficiency is more important than the student. So I want to make sure that when we're doing these, it doesn't become a heavier hammer to use that isn't maybe not necessary. That's my fear to this, is that, and I'm not accusing anyone of wanting to do that. It just feels like it could open the door to something more. And I guess I'm just asking the members of the policy committee, like, what are your thoughts on this? And Sherry, when you mentioned, maybe not the expulsion piece, maybe putting something more days,
That was really, that definitely was discussed. It's a very good question, and because it's the same procedure, but done in a different way, if that makes any sense. But Randy, I think, handled that really well when we went directly to him with that same question. And do you want to share, Randy?
Right, sure, yeah, absolutely. So this, none of the policy or the safeguards or the protocols would change. We're still looking at the same thresholds for behavior, right? I think this addresses the need to obviously to be thorough, follow the policy, but also for the sake of the student and the family involved in the administration, move in a little bit more efficient manner into due process, having those conversations, kind of working out an outcome, all while the board is being kept in the loop, right? So that communication would stay the same. So we can't bypass any of those other elements in due process, and we wouldn't. But from your point about, being too heavy-handed, I hear what you're saying, and, the commitment would be, following those same thresholds for punishment that we're doing right now. Knowing that there's variations here, maybe depending on what the situation is, but we do have a general matrix that we follow, thresholds of punishment. Right, going to be nuances between each one, but I think generally speaking, we're not looking to change those thresholds.
To Scott's point, I can understand that at appeal it could change, so maybe I'll talk myself back into this, but I'm still a little nervous, only because the ones that we've been involved in, they all haven't gone, I got to be careful, they all haven't gone the way they were originally proposed when we first walked in the room. And that, maybe at appeal they would have changed to be that way. But I'd rather have them start that way than have a student think it's going to go one way and change on them. Anybody else? I don't want to be the only one talking about this.
I think what you're trying to say is you're afraid that the board would change what the administration recommends for the penalty?
We have recently. And that's my pause, is I don't want a student to think that if they appeal, it's just not, they're not going to get heard. I'd rather have them get heard.
Well, they always have the option of the appeal. That's what this still includes. That's the biggie. The appeal is always there.
One thing we talked about at the policy committee meeting was, making it a certain number, like that they could do a suspension longer than 10 days, but, put a cap on it of whatever you're comfortable with, 25, 30, 60, 90. I don't know if that would give you, like for some of the offenses that might result in a longer suspension or expulsion, if that would give the board more comfort with this, if we kind of set a parameter of days like that. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, that's absolutely, certainly an option.
I'll just say one concern I have with it too, and this is purely from a matter of logistics, is if, say, a student's suspended for 25 days, the parents appeal, that means we've got to get a board meeting together, which at this point cannot be done virtually, to host a quorum to hear that appeal, or else the kid's already been out for more than 25 days before we meet again. So we've got to be flexible and meet to hear these appeals if they occur.
And the flip side of that, Mark, I think, too, is parents and student want to have due process efficiently as possible. And in a scenario of recent events, they're at the mercy of us meeting, right? So the outcome of the due process is delayed when maybe it could be processed along a little quicker, too. So I think there's two sides to that present challenges for, you know, I don't ever want the board to be the challenge to dealing with a student's livelihood moving forward. But certainly I think if you're in the parent or student's shoes and you start the due process, you probably don't want to be put in a holding pattern for a week because the board got to get a quorum together. So I think there's that small piece, Randy, I think that what you're asking for gives you that ability to move what is the very same process along, but then the parent could come in and appeal. So, other questions or comments, or is anybody interested in making a motion to amend the current motion that is on the floor, which would be to approve the policies as presented?
Randy, just to backtrack 1 second there. When it does come up that you're going to suspend for, be it 10 days, 25 days, 30 days, whatever, I assume everyone has somewhat of a set criteria, or this will be the penalty for a certain offense. The administration of each building is not just throwing darts and saying, we're going to pick 25 just because. There's a pretty good set criteria for the level of the offense.
Yes, that's correct. And I referenced the matrix. So this was work that was done quite some time ago before me, where it was just a behavior matrix of offenses and kind of ranked against punishments and outcomes. Of course, you know, administration always has the right to kind of jump if it's severe. You know, the other piece of conversation, you know, candidly, that's come about here is, you know, I think it is important to have the ability administratively to be thorough, but to be swift. And we're certainly finding that out right now. As much as I don't want to anticipate continued, you know, situations that we're dealing with like right now, I think this would make a statement that, you know, we're concerned about this type of behavior, you know, allowing a little more latitude. Even if this is amended, that's fine. I think ultimately what administration is looking for is just some flexibility on suspension beyond 10 days. You know, to Ted's points and the other folks that have spoken, and we talked about this in committee, I understand, you know, the gravity here in the weight, the kind of check and balance, right, with especially something as heavy as expulsion right there. So even if there's a, you know, kind of a balanced kind of middle where the administration can just have a little bit more latitude to administratively handle some of these, you know, lower offenses that wouldn't rise to expulsion, right? And then we're reporting out, the appeal is still there to have an audience with the board if desired by the family. We're just merely kind of flipping the administrative side and due process at central and with local administration, kind of putting that in place, and then, you know, folks, parents could come to the board if they so desired. I don't know if that kind of helps frame it in a little bit more, but I certainly understand, you know, where the board's at, especially when you get to that expulsion level. And you know, candidly, I'm not saying that administration would fully want that anyways. I'm not anticipating this happening a lot, right, the expulsion, but we're certainly living in a time right now where I think the ability to move efficiently and thoroughly is also important. If that helps frame the thinking in a little.
It does. I just want to be careful that in our want to do something about the events that we swing the pendulum too far to one side, right? So I think for me, I'd be more comfortable if it, I got one question before I say what I'd be more comfortable with. Well, I'll say, I'd be more comfortable with the expulsion thing not being, having to go before the board. Because that's such a big deal, right? But so 10 days and then in the matrix, you have to refresh my memory. I haven't looked at the matrix in a while. 10 days and then what's the next one? 20, I mean, is there it? Because it feels like right now, after 10, it comes to the board, and there has never been someone coming to the board for 15, someone coming to the board for 20, right? So
Right, correct. Yeah, so correct. So we have to come to the board after 10, right? And historically, it sounds like there just hasn't been a lot coming to the board, which is a good thing. So, not that we're anticipating an uptick here, but clearly, we have been dealing with a handful of situations recently that I think would warrant something beyond 10, but less than expulsion, right? So,
I guess what would that number be? What would that number be? Only because if you go to I'll just throw 25 days out, right?
Yep.
25 days gives plenty of time for us to come together as a board to hear an appeal, right? I understand on the 10-day, if you give the kid a 10-day, or you want to go something past 10 days, it might be the 12th or 13th day before the board can get together and say, yeah, you were right, it should have been more than 10 days, right? Either way, I'm still going to have to meet as a board. I'm just trying to figure out, like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for to be able to suspend a kid for a month? Are you looking for to be, that's the piece I don't understand. Because right now, it's either always been 10 days or expulsion. Like, I've never seen a 15-day suspension.
probably wouldn't recommend that. Typically, depending on the offense, you might be at 25, you might be at 45. I've seen policies written at 25 or a cap of 45, and then it's got to come to the board. I pulled this off of a school website. It is Neola, but some schools leave it administratively, all of it up to the board, and rely on the appeal process to have the audience with the board if it's chosen. I would say if the board's comfortable with 25, long-term suspension of 25 or 45, that would be, I think, fine. If the board wants to pull the expulsion and leave that to a board hearing, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're still going to follow all of the same processes either way. Yeah, so that's not in question here.
And the board hearing versus the appeal is essentially the same thing. It's depending. The appeal may not happen if the parents chose not to do it, I guess.
And that's my fear. My fear is that, we've seen cases where they don't have parents, it's guardians, and do they really think they got a chance at appeal, or are they just going to give up? And I don't want to see them give up. That's where my brain is swirling at the moment.
Right, and I hear you on that. You also have a pretty seasoned administration and support groups at the buildings that have been doing this a long time, and I think are balanced, and they want to see students that get caught up in poor decisions back in school. But I think there is that balance there with punishment, right, and outcomes for our actions. I think this again is more about the latitude for administration to make these decisions, beyond 10 days, and then allowing that board interaction based on appeal, other than the other way around. So you're right. Part of this is going to come back to the board relying on the administration, on the ground, making the right call. And then if there is a question by the parents or guardians, right, then you've got that appeal process to come into the board arena.
With the hesitation that we're talking about, I would rather see a gradual transition or change where we drop the expulsion and put a number on it of days of suspension, because, and then that can always be changed, just like we're changing it now. If it's working really good and we want to go further, fine. I would not like the opposite. If we do it all and all of a sudden we're feeling, wow, you know, this is not what I think the board would probably do, that's much harder to go back on. Yeah, I'd rather do it gradually.
Is that a motion to amend? Sherry, do you have a?
You know, it could be, I just don't know if, as far as a number, if Randy, you know, if 25, 45, I'm not sure, you know, what would help them, you know, to move on this. I'm not sure. That's the only part of it.
Right, what, you know, let's just start with 25. So, and again, I'm not making a motion, obviously, but the superintendent may suspend a student for a period no longer than 25 days. You know, any recommendation for expulsion, I mean, we could go revert back to the other language, you know, must come to the board. Parents have the right to appeal. So you'd want to put an appeal piece with the suspension, not the expulsion, right? Because right now, when the board expels, the decision is final. There's no appeal process. So I would recommend something then, again, if the comfort's there, that, you know, that strikeout line, the superintendent may recommend to the board that a student be expelled, right? And then the superintendent may suspend up to no more than 25 days. The board shall act on any appeal to suspension. Something like that. So you're separating out expulsion and no appeal, and then you've got a longer term suspension, but I think we need to have that appeal piece in there for a suspension, or beyond 10 days, right? I don't think you'd want to be able to appeal less than 10 days.
So we'd keep that same line, superintendent may suspend a student for a period no longer than, and we'd put 25 days, it would end there as far as taking or expel a student, correct?
Yep, right, and then just leave the expulsion piece in the strikeout line as is, right? You'd have to doctor that up a little, right? Because you take the word suspension out of it and just make that about expulsion, because you're dealing with the suspension in that next line. I mean, that could be a possible alternative.
So I'd like to make a motion that says that the superintendent or administration can suspend a student for up to 25 days, and that a suspension can be appealed to the board. Any expulsion still has to come before the board.
Thanks, Ted. Does he have support?
Support.
Thanks, Sherry. So we have an amendment to the original motion to approve policies as presented, along with Ted's amendment, which would change that particular policy to a 25-day minimum. I saw Valerie taking notes over there, so I think she got the language down. Randy, so the spirit of this is you can suspend up to 25 days, no expulsion. The expulsion would have to come before the board. Appeal process past 25 days could come before the board, appealed by a parent or guardian.
Yep, no, understood.
Any other conversation or discussion on this?
I guess just a point of clarification, Ted, you're saying that any suspension less than 25 days, a 10-day suspension would not have the option for appeal?
Good clarification. I think, you know, maybe it's 3 steps. You know, there's the regular suspension of up to 10 days, a long-term suspension up to 25, which can be appealed, and an expulsion, that would, all expulsions have to come before the board.
Correct.
So that was the original intent of the motion?
That was the original intent. Good catch,
Sherry, do you have any clarifying questions on that? Is that the spirit that you understood it? Okay, so 10 days, no appeal, 25 days appeal, no board requirement. Anything past that, including expulsion, has to come before the board. Any further discussion on the motion? It includes the entire policy package plus the amendment. Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next item is setting our first board meeting date and the reorganization meeting for January. We've done this two different ways. I know we've either started the board meeting, the reorganization meeting at 6:15 with the board meeting following, or it can really just be, start at 6:30. Obviously we're streaming, that makes sense, and then immediately following the reorganization meeting, moving into the board meeting. If people have had a chance to look at their schedules, at 6:30, that extra 15 minutes help everybody. We could keep it at 6:30. And that is January 10th. I guess I'll throw a motion out there that we set the reorganization meeting date for January 10th at 6:30 with the regular board meeting to follow immediately thereafter. Do I have support?
Support.
Thanks, Vicki.
Oh, wait,
I see
support.
people still checking calendars, but so we'll wait to make sure that works.
I'm good, I was just typing it in.
Hey, any other comments or questions on that? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next item is a requirement. The 80/20 health insurance cost resolution is presented by Pam, and it's in your board packet. Would anybody like to make a motion to accept this as presented? People get to that section in there.
So moved.
Thank you, Vicki. Does Vicki have support?
Support.
Okay. Pam, do you want to just run us through this really quick? I know it's kind of a requirement.
Sure. So about 10 years ago, the Michigan legislature put caps on how much public entities can spend for health insurance as the employer. And so the default is a hard cap, and they set those every year. You can choose an 80/20, which is what our district has done, and that just has to be approved every year to make it the 80/20 rather than the default. So that's what this is.
Thanks, Pam. Questions for Pam on this item? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next, we have two overnight trips from Mr. Pilar, the Model UN, one to East Lansing, one to U of M. He does this every year. I was always glad to see that he's persistent in getting the kids out to those universities. Those are both in our packet. Anybody like to make a motion to approve those as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Maureen. Support from Mark. Any questions? I did not see Jay here, so I don't think he's going to give us a rundown on what he's got planned, but maybe that could be a future board report, a school trip on Model UN or something. I know that quite some time ago, some board members participated in the Model UN in the high school. It was fun. It was a long time ago, but any other questions on this particular motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Overnight trips are approved. Last item on the agenda for new business is the proposal for the high school and middle school chillers is presented. Anybody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Bruce. Support?
Support.
Thanks, Vicki. Randy, I know that you guys were crunching numbers on this today, so maybe not every board member has had an opportunity to see what how the final meeting went today. You want to run us through that?
Yes, that did happen at noon. The bids were opened. I'm going to lean on Pam for this one. I know Pam was in the thick of it, as we say, right, in the boardroom. So give us an update, and then there's a drafted recommendation. And Pam, maybe talk a little bit about funding discussions we've had.
Thank you. Yes, we did put this out to bid 2 weeks ago as required with the competitive bid process. And so it was posted for the 2 weeks, and we had the bid opening today. We received 3 bids. One was from Air Tech Equipment, which is a Daikin chiller product. Carrier was another one, and Train. I was accompanied by our Director of Facilities, Brian Cornish, and Energy Manager, Michael Hollahan. They were the ones kind of going over the specs and actual specifics of what these look like as it pertains to the project. So we did get 3 good bids. There's a lot of factors they still want to ponder, but they just kind of ran through the figures roughly at this point and looked at the worst case scenario and came up with the $460,000 is the max that we would need to spend for the 2 chillers. That does only include the chillers themselves. The installation will be bid out separately after the first of the year. But they're confident they're going to get a good combination of how they want to do this. It is possible that we will only choose, and we put this in the bid spec this way, choose one of them right now. The high school would be the first project. And the reason that we just wouldn't pick them both and kind of try to do them at the same time is just the feasibility of really trying to do those both like in a short period of time, which would be probably next summer because there's lead time for these. We're planning on hopefully getting them at the beginning of the summer, and then that project runs through the summer. And you just really couldn't try to cram both of those in, you know, in one time period like that. So it's possible that we would just purchase one at this time, and then we would try to do another bid. They're confident that these actually, unlike a lot of other things these days, prices probably will be going down on these actually. So, but we have to order at least the one right now to get going on the project and have it for next summer. So that's kind of where that stands. So we can come back if you approve this, and then we can kind of proceed with our final decision, and we can come back with those details as to which one and combination and price we actually chose.
And was there some discussion around how it was going to be funded? Is this a general fund expenditure?
Sorry, I didn't approach that part of it. It actually is going to be either bond contingency or ESSER funds, and that's kind of how we started with this project. Looking at it more closely is it's the use of the ESSER funds. This is an applicable expense because of upgrading HVAC systems as it relates to COVID. So we can use some of our ESSER funds, and it also some of the past bond funds. Those contingency monies can also be used. So we're still kind of looking at what point all that will fit in. It might be one or the other or a combination of those types of funds, so not general fund.
Great news. Any other questions for Pam?
What were the 3 types of chillers again?
It was Daikin and Train and Carrier.
And I think, so that's the equipment, and like you said, Pam, then the installation would be probably bid out to a local provider, like a Mall City Mechanical or other, that's already probably, you know, we've had multiple
Correct.
local companies do that work before in the past.
Yes, that's correct.
Good. So our motion as presented was a not to exceed $460,000 for 2 chillers, is on the floor. Any last final questions for Pam? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. All right, we will move into public comment. Valerie, I've got one up here, and I think I saw at least a couple more get turned into you. All right, so we'll do public comment now. We've got the microphone up front here. If you could, try to keep it to 4 minutes. I'll give you a reminder with about 30 seconds left. Sarah Yetter.
Hello again. I'm here again to advocate for our kids and the unmasking of our students. I know most parents feel that this falls on deaf ears, as I do as well, but I will continue to advocate for them. I emailed you all shortly after the tragedy in Oxford to remind you of the severity of mental illness in our world today. I know Randy thought that the correlation between mask mandates and mental illness was over the top. And the more I thought about it, the more I believe that I have a strong point. The continued mandating of these children is causing those with mental illness only to become more exacerbated. These kids already have difficulties in mood or with learning or with socialization. Look at the number of threats that have occurred not only in our district, but in others around the area. These individuals are being pushed to their limits with these ongoing mandates and continued moving targets. At the last board meetings, you all seemed to be in agreement that the mandate would end 6 weeks after the younger population were eligible for vaccines. Well, it was approved over 6 weeks ago, so why can't we end the mandates starting January 3rd? As Scott mentioned, you guys at one point said you were going to follow the county that had the strictest mandates, and that we did. And now Kalamazoo is lifting those mandates at the end of this week. I ask you, why aren't we? Who are you to make those decisions? How much more can our youth take? What will be finally the end of this nonsense? I can tell you COVID is here to stay, just like the flu, and we need to learn to live with it and start passing out vitamins and healthy foods instead of mandates and continual vaccinations. There is no proof whatsoever that these mandates are working. Masking does not correlate with a decrease in cases. And might I remind you that the group that you say you are trying to protect are not at high risk for COVID. As Maureen kind of mentioned a little bit about the MDHHS is only recommending masks, and they're not mandating them. And they are also not mandating quarantining if you've been exposed. I mean, you keep saying your goals are to keep the schools open. You can keep the schools open even with positive cases. Those that have been exposed just need to wear masks. They don't need to stay home. I don't know why we can't move to that. It's time to say enough is enough, and these continued mandates are unnecessary, they were cruel, and they're a form of child abuse. If you are truly looking out for what is best for our students here at Mattawan, you should leave the choice up to the families and end the mask mandates. And I also wanted to mention, Randy, you said that the January 28th would be the next date. I mean, I just think that's continuing to give false hope to our community, because you guys said it was going to be 6 weeks, then you said it was going to be following Kalamazoo, and you're not doing any of those. So how is anybody in our community supposed to believe anything that you guys say anymore? It's continually changing. So with that, I wanted to bring up on a totally different note, you guys mentioned the security and the safety in our buildings, and I know that you guys can't answer questions I have right now, but I saw at Oxford they had these door jams that they were like foot locks.
We are at 30 seconds, Sarah, thanks.
Okay, I just wondered if that was anything you guys could maybe look into, or like special locks for the doors, that Oxford people are saying that that's what they feel saved a lot of the students in that building. So with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. Misty Messamore.
I'm kind of like Sarah on this. This is the 5th time I think I've been up here. And I do kind of feel like it's falling on deaf ears. I don't know if anybody's even considered anything that any of us has said. I actually subbed in the middle school on Friday in the choir room. It's a big room if you've been in there. Subbing can be tough sometimes, as it is, but when you're in a big room with kids and masks, I mean, it can be difficult just to take attendance. And I remember thinking on Friday, well, gosh, it's just one more week, get through till January, we'll be fine, the masks are gone. And then got home from taking my daughter to ski and discovered that, no, that mask mandate got extended. So to say that I was frustrated would be an understatement. Last week, one of my daughters had a cold. Terrible runny nose, had to wear that mask all day with that. She's one of those kids that won't miss school for anything, so she dealt with it the best she could. I had 2 home today. One needed a mental health day. She is flat out struggling, and it's hard for me to watch that. And then the other one has a cold now, and she couldn't breathe. She called and said, I cannot breathe with this mask on, so I just went and picked her up. So I think that we need to look at other things besides just COVID right now. Like, it's clear, and if it's not to some people, but the vaccine is not going to eradicate this. It's not. Half the people that I talk to that have had it recently are vaccinated. So vaccinated or not, it's not going anywhere. And again, we're in a situation where I never hear anybody say anything about natural immunity. I don't know why that's not coming up in conversation, because I can guarantee you probably half the kids in the school have had it. And nobody talks about that. They just want to talk about the vaccine. So I tried personally to get a waiver for my kids because I do have severe concerns with them with these masks through Bronson. But I was told that my physician, whom we've seen since my kids were little, wasn't even allowed to meet us on that because administration directed all of their physicians that they are not allowed to give waivers for any reason whatsoever. So the administration, who knows nothing about me and my family, is not allowing my physician to even discuss that with me. Another thing is, I know a lot of people are here and concerned about the bullying at school. And something that bothers me is I have a daughter whose comment to me after talking about this, because I asked my kids if they've experienced any of that, was that she would rather be bullied than be invisible. Because right now, that's how she feels. And it's really hard to put yourself out there when your face is covered every day. I'm sure there are people whose kids are doing fine. I believe that. Mine are struggling. And it's just frustrating that we don't even have the option. Give us a waiver. Give us something we can sign. There are people at school, they have waivers for their kids. So, I'm in the schools. I can probably tell you 25% of those kids are probably wearing their masks the correct way. Some of those being your own children that don't wear them the right way. Mine probably don't wear them the right way. So what's the difference between just letting them off and them wearing them down on their chin, or they're constantly got food with them so that they have a reason to take that break? They're still next to each other.
30 seconds, thanks.
Anyway, I think it's nice to be able to get 4 minutes to discuss this with you, but what would be better is if we could actually have a discussion with you, where we could ask questions and maybe get more information as to why you're feeling so strongly about this, because it doesn't make any sense to a lot of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Vicki Wanek.
Hi, I'm here again. I've been at every board meeting since August, so I know you know who I am. I again have 5 kids in the school. I'm here to say that school teachers are to teach. Board members are not teaching, should be teaching, or giving advice on vaccine. I have recently heard that some at the early L are being taught about vaccines. Vaccines are parents' choice. Is the school going to now take on medical liability for giving this advice? That's not right. Again, the masking. I'm here to advocate for the kids with masking. Everybody is so much onto the vaccine. Then if you're so much on the vaccine, and even early in the year, you guys had the survey regarding the vaccine status in either the Mattawan schools in the Van Buren area. So I'm feeling like you guys are kind of letting go of the vaccine. So it's like you don't trust the science, is what I'm seeing. Quarantines. I got a call regarding one of my high school kids that there's been a late exposure. I'm like, what are you talking about, late exposure? Well, someone didn't let us know until a week after. So technically, your child should go into quarantine. I go, whoa, 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 wait a minute. So technically, my daughter, who has been at school, should have been in quarantine. But she's had no symptoms, has not been sick at all. She is a case to say that these quarantines don't work. And you're choosing to quarantine healthy kids. So that, I was appalled that I even got the call for that. I think it's back to common sense. Parents know their kids. It's common sense. If my child is sick, I'm going to keep them home from school. I'm not going to send my kid to school. I think it's common sense to know what a teacher should be teaching: math, English, language arts, writing. I don't think they should be teaching on vaccines. The survey results. The last board meeting talked about the survey. I haven't heard anything about the survey results. Mr. Fleener said he was going to email me regarding it. I haven't heard anything. I'm curious to know about the survey and the most recent survey that came out to parents talking about COVID funds. I haven't heard that either. So I feel like you send these surveys to the parents, but we don't get feedback regarding what we voted on or what we thought. And then the meeting, okay, so I've been to a few meetings I've been to the Mattawan Village meeting. So they have public comment like you guys have done here, but then they also have the option to vote. So I don't know why, but I'm throwing this question out, and I know you don't answer them. Why don't you guys vote on something that the parents bring up at these meetings? Like, we feel like we
Vicki, you're
are
at
not
30
hearing,
seconds.
like you guys are not hearing us. So there's a lot of parents that are losing faith in every one of you guys sitting up there, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Heather Lefkes.
Hi there. I thought I was coming with somewhat of a unique perspective, but it seems right in line with the additional speakers we've had here. But I first want to say thank you for your service on the board. I cannot imagine how stressful of a job this must be in this pandemic, juggling personal life, these responsibilities, parents that are maybe a little bit more frustrated than they would have otherwise. So I wanted to pause and say that. It's clear that you care. There's no doubt about it. This gentleman, it almost seemed as if he got choked up listening to the kindergarten teachers, and I myself did. So there's no doubt that you care. care. And thank you also for being very clear and transparent in continuous communication in regards to the safety issues, especially in things involving law enforcement and security issues in the school. So I very much appreciate that. And given the intense focus on safety issues, I'm just curious if the board has truly in your heart, thought about the impact on our students' mental health with the always moving, and I mean always moving goalpost measures related to COVID. So consider this at the beginning of the school year. Summer, no masks. We had to change course because Delta came around and the board voted to follow the most restrictive health department. Cool, get it, new goalpost. Well, we've met that goalpost. The health department rescinded their mask mandate effective the 17th. We have now, as the administration has chosen to extend that. Well, now we're in Omicron. So we have to think about that. When are we going to take a stand and say enough is enough? And it frustrated me a little bit at the basketball game. Never attended a Mattawan basketball game. I love this community, and it was my first time. And I happened to see Mr. Fleener there without a mask. So just that same day, we got an email saying the masks continuing, but shows up at a basketball game. I'm just curious what message that sends to our students, to our community, that it's like going into a restaurant. You wear your mask to the table and then you can take it off. Like COVID just all of a sudden doesn't exist. So I think we've got to draw a line in the sand on where this truly ends. And here, I'm not here to change your mind on masks or vaccines. It's very clear that you have a stance, just as I. And I honor and support those beliefs. But I'm here, honestly, because I care about health. And I don't think we're really, really focusing on that. We are not going to mask and vaccinate our way out of this pandemic. So why can't we have both? Why can't you as a board or as a community and people who want to advocate for vaccines say, hey, we encourage you to get this, but then we also encourage people to do lifestyle measures? I can't promise that I have the answer, but I think somebody mentioned it as well. I'd love to have more community involvement. I myself, I'm a health coach, and it's my passion to empower people with the tools to know that their bodies are perfect. Their bodies are perfect, and if given half a chance, it can heal itself. But we don't hear anything about that. There will always be another variant. There will always be another pandemic. Are we going to hide for another 2 years waiting for a vaccine, or are we going to start to create true health and infrastructure for true health? Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Last, we have Lena Rogues.
I'm going to start off with a little story. I have a daughter who's 27.
Maybe a little closer to the microphone, please.
I have a daughter who's 27. 10 years ago, she had a kidney transplant. She has no immune system. She's on anti-immune drugs. She got COVID a little over a month ago, and I treated her myself with ivermectin. In 5 days, she was back to normal. So this whole COVID thing is ridiculous. It's fake. These masks are not going away because they're getting paid to have these masks on people. And I just wanted to say that. I also was going to mention something about the basketball game. What is the deal? You guys are sitting here with masks on, and I watch the basketball game, and nobody has masks on, and these kids are out there playing. They're breathing hard. This is where you're going to catch it if there's anything out there to catch. And they don't have to wear masks, but then you're sitting here like Mr. Fleener with a mask on right now. It's just all theater. It's all theater. And it's very disappointing that my kid's going to school here with these kind of people. And these doctors, they should know this. That's it.
Thank you, Lane. Valerie, any other public comment? Okay, not hearing any, we'll jump into Randy's superintendent report.
I had the health plan and then safety comments on my SUPS report. We've already covered both of those, so I would just open it up for any questions from the board.
Questions for Randy on any of the following items, or I guess regarding public comment?
Just a quick date question,
Please.
Randy. I meant to ask you before. Is January 14th the dedication of the gym?
That sounds correct. I'm double checking here.
Yeah, I meant to ask before, but I thought I didn't want to forget again.
That's a Friday. I believe so, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
and that is still on.
Thanks.
We'll have some communication coming out to the community on that. But everything's coming together on that. The items we need for the dedication and, the lettering and the plaques and so forth.
I got just a follow-up. I think it's more of a comment than a question because I really know the answer, but the basketball game was brought up twice from a health and safety standpoint. It's my understanding, and Randy, you could comment on this, but the classrooms required by the state of Michigan that we provide education to all students, extracurricular activities or not. And the trying to compromise a little bit on that the folks can have choice. And they're not required to be there. If we had a basketball player that wanted to wear a mask, we'd allow them to do that. We'd encourage any student and recommend that they wear a mask in that gym. So there is a distinction between the two. I wanted to clarify that based on what I heard. Anything you would add?
Correct. And you may recall even when Kalamazoo issued their order, it was during the academic day. So the academic day is considered compulsory. It's required, students to attend. And to your point, we did make that decision a while back, I think at the beginning of the year, that we would follow, that lead between compulsory and extracurricular or choice activities. And I understand that it's controversial and can be somewhat confusing, but that does fall in line with what the Kalamazoo Health Department even stipulated in theirs, MHSAA recommendations. So that is the difference. Yep.
Any other questions or comments for Randy? Okay, the next thing on our agenda is for us to get a motion to go into closed session, and we'll perform Randy's evaluation. We'll come out of closed session for that. We have 2 more agenda items on the agenda tonight for action after that. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session for Randy's evaluation.
So moved.
Thanks, Maureen.
Support.
Support from Mark. I always like to do a roll call vote for closed session. Bruce?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Scott's a yes. Ted?
Yes.
Sherry? Yes. Vicky?
Yes.
Okay. We will take just a brief break. I could use brief break, and we could do like we did last month. I think if it works for everybody, we'll just turn our chairs in a circle behind us here, and I know Valerie's going to post the door, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Randy, and you're doing an excellent job. I think that's what I heard. But also during the process, which I liked, you were open to, and I don't want to call it criticism, but open to growth. And you accepted that real well, and so I have to appreciate that process. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks, Vicki. Go ahead, Sherry.
I totally agree with what Vicki said. The process it went very well, and you were so willing and wanted to listen to everything that, that we had to say. The last thing I'd want to do is get evaluated in this time in our world. You have us on a path of growth, a very positive path, and that's very exciting to all of us, and we appreciate, your energy, your spirit. You said in your interview you were going to be the biggest cheerleader in the district, and you were definitely one of them. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll go down the line. I do want to say that I liked the process. This evaluation tool was easy to understand. The bar was 10 attributes. I think we'll add 10 more next year, right? Eventually it's 36, 33, 31. So, when you hear the term effective, I mean, that's not an easy bar to get to based on this tool. So I think there were marks in there there were individual growth area or individual domains that we marked you highly effective in, and I think that's the whole thing's to be celebrated. Great job. Thank you for being a strong leader. Thank you for keeping our kids first and foremost in your mind. Thank you for helping us get to another step in the evolution of Mattawan Consolidated Schools.
Yeah, I would just add, I appreciate and see the growth within the central office and everybody that's involved there, from curriculum to DEI and finance. I'm proud of them, and I think your leadership is shown through that. Just appreciate your willingness to really roll up your sleeves during challenging times with everything that's going on with COVID and some of the safety concerns, and being available for many parents that I know are contacting you directly. That's a lot of time that you put into that with care. I appreciate that. And certainly negotiating with the teachers' unions, a couple successful contracts, just outstanding that we could do more for our teachers here in Mattawan. It's been a long time coming. So keep up the great work, Randy. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo what a lot of the other board members said. I was pleased with the process. I think we have a lot to celebrate and a lot to look forward to. So thank you for all your hard work.
Again, Randy, I'd agree with what the other board members have said. To get a rating of effective on this particular evaluation tool is not at all to be equated with a C grade. It's, in my mind, more like a B plus, A minus. And then in these days in which you've done this, being relatively new to the district, crazy times with COVID and other challenges going on, you've still managed to progress our learning in this school, the teams you've set up, the teachers' educations, professional learning time, just across the board. You've advanced us even during very difficult times, and I sure appreciate that.
I'll just throw in simple ditto.
All right, thanks, Bruce. So any final questions or comments before we vote? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Randy, on your evaluation. All right, another item we have on the agenda is the executive committee met and had reviewed with a third party, Gary Ryder, who's been a consultant for the board for quite some time in various capacities, from strategic planning to governance to assisting in several superintendent searches and compensation as well. So we took a look at Randy's contract, and there's a couple things of note here in this amendment. The first item being an extension to his contract, making it a rolling 3-year contract. This added school calendar year puts him out to that third year for 2024, 2025. There's a recommendation in there. There's an item where he is allowed to expense doctorate classes, including his dissertation. It was in his original contract at $3,000. The recommendation in this amendment is to increase that to $5,000. And lastly, with that extension, if approved in item number 1, which takes him to 2024, 2025, that would actually be Randy's 5th year here at the district that he would be starting in 2024. And with that, there's a longevity incentive in here that if his evaluation is effective or higher in December of, I get the state right, December of 2023, after his normal base increase per his contract would be an additional $10,000 added to the base. With that, that's pretty much how the amendment reads. Is there a motion on the floor to approve this amendment?
So moved.
Thanks, Ted.
Support.
And support from Mark. Any discussion on this? I'll just say I appreciate the executive committee's help on this. Gary Ryder, of course, and I know he's going to continue to work with the board in the future. But Randy, I hope this shows that we really want to see you here long term. We love what you're doing. We know there's a lot to accomplish in your eyes, that you really feel that there's more work to do. But proud of you, and it's well earned. Other comments? Okay, not seeing any. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. I'm going to sign this right now and pass it down to Maureen. There is just one final item here. A little bittersweet, but I am going to offer my resignation to Randy effective now. It's for personal reasons that are quite positive for my family and I. It has nothing to do with the atmosphere of school boards or the things that are going on. I'm very, very honored and enjoyed my time serving the Mattawan community. There's no doubt in my mind that the school is in great hands with Mr. Fleener. In fact, it's one of my proudest moments was participating and actively hiring him as the next superintendent. I feel extremely confident that the school district's going in the right direction. It's been a pleasure serving with all of you on the board, prior board members, teachers, tech staff, administration and central office, teachers, and everybody in the whole district has just been incredibly supportive of not only this role I have, but as a parent in the district. And I'm not moving out of the district. My kids are still going to school here, and so you'll see me around campus, and look forward to spending more time with all of you in just a slightly different capacity. But very proud of the work we've done, and I know you guys will continue to do a great job moving forward. But I'm going to hand this resignation over to Randy, and I'm going to pass the gavel to Ted.
Can I make a comment?
Go for it.
Just want to thank you, Scott, for the support, and it's kind of been a crazy 18 months, especially for a new guy coming in, transitioning, and really just echo that for the support from the whole board. But appreciate your guidance and listening ear, and not putting me to voicemail when I call. So, yeah, gonna miss you, and good luck. We'll see you around probably, right?
I've been searching my memory banks to try to figure out when it was, but I think it was, what was your first year on the board? You can help me with this.
2012, I think.
So, first time I met Scott was in 2012 in the center office building as we both were applying for a vacant board seat. Scott beat me. Deservedly so. I mean, every Every minute I've had on this board has been with Scott. I do appreciate all the time and energy you've put into being a board member and for helping us grow as a board. Without you, I don't think we'd be where we are today as a board or as a district. So I appreciate everything you've done. It's bittersweet to take this gavel from you for tonight's meeting. But thank you for everything you've done, and look forward to great things and working with you in other ways. So thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
And I guess that also segues into Randy, I'm going to need some help. Just like I mentioned, I had to sit outside and apply for a vacant board seat. We now have a vacant board seat that we're going to need to fill, and I'm assuming we will post that.
Yep, absolutely. So we would move to post this vacancy tomorrow, and there's a couple different venues that it has to be posted on. Valerie's pretty well versed in that. So we've got to have it out in the community. We'll run it in the paper. Typically, a district will post it on social media. You know, I might just let parents know through school messenger as well. Typically, those postings run at least 2 weeks, at which point the posting would direct interested parties. You know, it'll kind of outline qualifications, and typically those interested parties send a letter of interest and any credentials they deem noteworthy to the board secretary. And then typically the board, the board secretary and superintendent, or just the board secretary, and then, you know, you'll compile those, get those to central. And then the board will need to determine kind of how to proceed with the applicants.
So because, you know, the schools are the central part to most of our experiences in Mattawan, I anticipate there'll be a large number of folks that would apply to be on the board. And in anticipation of that, I'm curious if anybody would be willing to be in a group, you know, maybe 3 of us, obviously it can only be 3 of us, 3 of us to look at that group of applications and then, you know, give that first pass through them and then bring to the board the candidates that you think we should invite for further discussion and interviews. Is anybody willing to? All right, Sherry. Oh, I got Mark and Bruce. So 3 of you want to do it, or do you want? I could be a part of that too. Well, yeah, I'll be a part of it, and then Sherry. And then you guys want to arm wrestle? Bruce. So Sherry, Bruce, and myself will sift through the stacks and stacks of applications and bring to the rest of the board the group to vote on. That works, Randy.
Right. Yes, and then the board would need to decide, you know, on those applicants that the board wants to interview. The board typically would set a special meeting, right? Public meeting, and then the board would generate some questions, right? You just conduct it like normal interviews, and typically at that meeting, the board would vote because this is an appointed position that will finish Mr. Sylvester's term. A year left, right? Or, yep, a year from now. And so then, you know, at that special meeting, if the board chooses a candidate, the candidate could be sworn in right there and then attend the regular session on January 10th.
So just a point to understand, because I'm asking this question too. So as this small committee, myself, Sherry, and Bruce, do we have to bring that slate to the board to vote on to bring, or do we bring that slate, or do I guess how, do we have to have a special meeting to vote on those are the people that we want to interview?
Right. No, my understanding is by the board appointing a search committee, essentially, that search committee should convene in a committee meeting, though, which is actually a public meeting, to review those. So the board could review those applicants, right? And it's a public meeting, so that, yeah. Right, so so it would be a public meeting, committee meeting, less than 4, and then you generate a short list, so to speak, and then that would come to a special full board meeting to conduct the interview session. That's typically kind of how it's done. And then I would recommend that that special meeting be held the week before the general session on the 10th. Or some boards have had a special meeting prior to the general session, right, and just roll right into it, but that would make for a very early start that day.
So you're saying we should have a special board meeting sometime the week of the...
Yep, let me pull that over.
So you're saying we should have a special board meeting sometime the week of the, well, that's gonna be hard, the 3rd of January?
Right, because we do have to have it filled within 30 days of the vacation. So, right, so we would, you know, your committee, we'd post that tomorrow. You'd have it out for 2 weeks. Yeah, the holidays are going to play into this in New Year's, but the search committee could convene somewhere in the week of the 27th, and then you could have a special meeting for interviews the week of the 3rd. But we are operating under state law within a 30-day to fill, though. So it is falling, we're working through 2 holidays, but I think it can be done.
So if people could forward, you know, let's start a discussion on, or we can, I guess we might be able to do it here. What nights are folks available that week of the 3rd for a special meeting? Mondays are rough for me. I'd propose Tuesday the 4th.
That works for me.
We need 4, so Bruce or 4th is good. Mark?
I'm on call, but as long as things are quiet, it's good.
Okay. Vicki, is the 4th okay for you? All right, so let's try the 4th, and then I'll get with Bruce and Sherry. We'll talk about, maybe we can huddle up right after this and talk about the committee meeting. Yeah, so it'll be 6:30 on the 4th. So what we'll do is we'll meet as a committee that week of the 27th. After that, we'll reach out to those people that we want to interview and invite them to come on the 4th. And we'll have our meeting on the 4th at 6:30. All right. Anything else we need to discuss tonight? Well, thanks a lot, Scott. This thing's heavy. Do I hear, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor of closing this session of school board?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, I guess? No? All right, so moved.